Maddie, where are we at?
Magnolia Market.
No.
Magnolia Table.
What are we doing?
We're eating here.
Are we gonna wait? For how long?
An hour and 15 minutes.
It's not fun, but we're having fun at the same time because the coffee bar is open, so that's good.
But nothing for me.
Nope, no coffee for Maddie. What else? What else do you want to say?
Subscribe to her channel.
Yeah.
I can relax here all day.
All day?
Yeah. With the nice and cool weather.
Have you had a good day so far?
I got a shirt and a hat, and I'm going to see my Nini.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, I'm gonna see my little cousin and hold the new baby, Rosie.
Is that Rosie? How you doing? This is Rosie. She'll be 4 months next week. Wow, you're so old.
What I also did is I coated them in
Texas.
Yeah, no, I'll be alright.
You're what?
We're at Six Flags of Texas, and it's so cold outside.
Right.
So
Not
cold.
that cold.
So cold to me though. And we just ate pizza.
Yep. Fixing to ride more rides. Alex,
They'll be there fancy.
boom.
That's Alex.
Okay. I'm good.
Do y'all want to do a s'mores?
Mom really wants to do s'mores.
You really wanna do a s'more? I'll do one with you.
Oh, yay, yay!
Okay.
It's so exciting! Let's go. I hope my marshmallow doesn't fall off.
I'm gonna set mine up.
Mom's so happy she got us s'mores.
How bad is it?
You're clean.
Really, you're lying.
Mom's gonna ride the Batman with me.
Oh,
She doesn't ride roller coasters.
I don't like.
How did you like it?
That was so. I don't even have any words. I don't even have any words.
She didn't. That's not
least you were
excitement. She actually hated it.
At least you got off.
I was like, yeah, I was gonna cry. When we stopped, I was like, I think I'm gonna cry. I was so scared.
It wasn't that bad. She's just a scaredy cat.
I did it though, man. And I got mom kudos, and I got brownie points.
Yeah, hella, you got a hella.
She did. So they tried to take a picture by the snowman and they broke it. Adriana! Okay, hi guys. So this is my good friend Caleb Kostreva, and I've actually known you since you first came here. We have like this jacket journey thing, and so I was his leader for that. And so anyway, boring information y'all don't care about, but we just decided that we were going to talk about first world problems and what that means first, like at all. And I've got some questions for Caleb, and I just thought he would be a great person to talk about this stuff with. So take it away.
Yeah. So I guess I want to start off defining what a first world problem is. Broadly, I think that a first world problem is anything that you do or you think that is really just a discomfort. And I think that the root of it is an ignorance of the way that people live around the world. So drawing from my own experience, I complain about my dryer all the time, about how it takes like 2, 3, sometimes 4 cycles for even like small loads to like dry. And I hate it. It drives me nuts. But I also remember in China going through, I studied abroad in China for a semester, and I did a research project while I was there of a slum in Shanghai. And I remember walking through the alleyways, and the people were literally living in like pieced together huts out of corrugated metal and plastic and like scraps of wood, and it was like they had nothing. They didn't have a dryer, they didn't have a washer, they didn't have, like, they might have had a light hooked up somehow inside, but it was like half the size of my living room, and I feel like my living room is small. So like every time I complain about the dryer, I have to remind myself of the fact that I have a dryer. And every time that I walk into Walmart, I have to remind myself, oh, they don't have the scent of candle that I want. I have to remind myself that like there are 5,000 types of candles in front of me, and I have the means to even purchase one. And so yeah, I think that is what first world problems are.
So just identify for us kind of what we can do to be part of the solution about being these first world problems, but also just as Christians, like how we can solve this era of selfishness, of uncomfortability that we're called to. Because yes, we want to be comfortable, like yes, we want these nice lavish things, but what does that mean? What does God tell us to do through that, and how do we glorify Him through that, if I'm making sense for you? Yeah.
Can you repeat the first part of that?
Yeah. What can we do to be part of the solution to help with this first world problem issue?
Sure. So first of all, I think that it takes practice. You don't change your mindset, you don't change your thought lifestyle just in a momentary decision. It takes time. When I got back from China, I went through culture shock, and reverse culture shock, coming back into my original culture. And every time, I think that, first of all, prefacing, I think that one way to do it is you go to a place that doesn't deal with first world problems because they can't. So go to rural China, or go to some really impoverished nation, and don't go there as a tourist. I think that's the big part. You can go to the most impoverished nation in the world and still not experience the third world. Some people will argue that the third world doesn't exist anymore, but it does. You have to go there and experience it like the locals do. Obviously, like within reason, like you want to maintain your health and you want to be safe. But to the extent that you're able, like experience what the locals experience the poverty, and that's one way. But obviously, not everyone has the ability to take a mission trip or go on your own dime and go to some of these places, and just think about, I think, the needs and wants. There's a balance between needs and wants, and if you identify something that's a want and you're complaining about it, maybe just take a moment and think about it. The Romans 12:1-2 talks about taking our thoughts captive, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's 12:1-2.
I'm gonna go with it because I don't know off the top of my head.
It talks about taking every thought captive, and how we need to, like, that is important to our spiritual development. And later in the chapter, it talks about how we have to love people, unconditionally, and we have to stop being prideful. We have to practice hospitality. We have to not take revenge. We have to, we should. All these things, we shouldn't take revenge, but we should leave that to God. We should be forgiving to one another. And the last verse says, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And that takes time. It takes practice. In fact, when it says be hospitable, it says practice hospitality. It's something that you go outside of your comfort zone in, and over time you will be hospitable. And sort of going off of that vein, earlier in the New Testament, Matthew 7 talks about how we shouldn't be judgmental. And I think that this is a really big issue that especially first world people living in first world countries deals with, is being judgmental of people who don't have the same lifestyle, or judgmental of people who don't have the same living standard as they do. And Matthew 7 says that we will be judged to the same standard that we judge others by. And that's really convicting to me, I know, because sometimes I can be really judgmental of people, and I just have to stop and take a breath and remind myself that God calls us to not be judgmental.
Yeah. For sure. And going off of that, Matthew 10 says that whoever wants his life shall lose it, because, and I think it comes back to a sin root issue of pride. What do we put our pride in, and if it's not the Lord, then it's wrong. So there's nothing wrong, I guess, not to get us confused, of saying there's nothing wrong with wanting a home, wanting your needs, I guess. But anything, not recognizing that anything outside of that is less than a blessing.
And I think going off of that, it's fine to want to desire a certain living standard. It's perfectly acceptable to have desires of some things that maybe are more expensive or whatever. But I think it becomes a problem when you start complaining about not having that. Realizing that our life of victory over sin and our life of victory over death because of Christ, spiritual death because of Christ, allows us to have grace and allows us to have freedom, and anything outside of that is a blessing, like Carly just said.
No, for sure. Well, I'm gonna wrap up because I can rant. I literally can rant about this all day. And I think one of the biggest issues is realizing that we're not perfect in that, and that I like that you touched on that it's a practice, and constantly taking your thoughts captive, because we can get so wrapped up in this world of I'm not good enough, and I'm never gonna, or I want this.
And if I can jump in real quick.
Do it.
It comes down to being content. Philippians 4, Paul says, I've learned to be content in all circumstances. If you aren't able to be content with little, you're not going to be content with much. If you're not going to be able to live without something, you're probably idolizing it. And it comes down to being content. And that's what first world problems are, when you're not content. But
No, thanks for hanging out, Caleb, and doing this with me. I really value your opinion and your experience, because Caleb has a lot of it, and I know that just the Lord has blessed you with all kinds of adventure and insight toward that. So thanks.
For sure, it was fun.
Okay, well, we'll see y'all later. Bye.